Start with a short introduction about you, and then we'll head off to the interview. We'll be about an hour maximum. Yeah. Okay. So, welcome everybody to Gezond aan tafel. I'm honored to be joined by Professor Tim Spector, a renowned scientist and professor of epidemiology at King's College, London. Spector is renowned for his groundbreaking research on the microbiome and has authored several bestsellers, including The Diet Myth, Spoon-Fed, and Food for Life. He's also the co-founder of Zoe, a science-based health platform that's transforming our understanding of personalized nutrition. But I'm especially excited to discuss his latest work today, the Food for Life cookbook. Welcome, Tim.
Good to be here.
Good to be here. Goedemorgen, goedemorgen. Before we dive into the science, I'm curious about something more personal. I don't know if you've heard about the Japanese concept of ikigai, which refers to finding purpose and meaning in life. So what would you say is your ikigai, your driving purpose in your work?
I would say now it's trying to help improve the health of millions of people by giving them the tools to navigate their food choices, and while still enjoying food as much as possible. So
and is this derived from a personal experience?
It's evolved from a personal experience, yes. So back in 2011 I was doing some ski mountaineering and had a mini stroke that left me with double vision and high blood pressure, and it recovered, but it changed my perspective on life and started me thinking selfishly about what I could do for my own health to live longer and not die early of a heart attack like my father. And so that was my personal mission in a way, to try and discover what is the best way of eating and change my research from just dealing in populations to actually being able to give more personal advice to people and see their way through it. So that changed my perspective. Up to that point I'd really just done, I was a trained doctor, so I'd just really done, what most doctors were taught to believe, which is, very traditional ideas about nutrition, about calories and fats, etc.
Because your expertise centers around the microbiome. It's also become kind of a buzzword in health circles for our audience, and I was thinking, so I can explain it to my 9-year-old at home. Could you break down what the microbiome actually is and why it matters so fundamentally for our health?
Yes, so for your 9-year-old, we have inside our bodies as many microbes. A microbe is something you need a microscope to see. It's so tiny. And microbes are made up of lots of different species in groups. And the one we know most about are called bacteria, but there's also archaea, there are parasites, which are bigger, there are fungi in there, yeast and fungi, and there are also viruses that eat a lot of the bacteria. And it's like a bit of a jungle or a giant garden.
Sounds scary. Sounds scary.
It's a bit scary if you didn't know your way around. It's very dark in there. And most of them live in the lower part of our intestines, the colon. And 99% live there. That's where we have the biggest density, but they are all over our body. And the best way to think about it is because they work as a group, as a community, and they produce chemical factories. So they are chemical factories, I should say. So all of them convert food, they break down the food into its components and then produce other chemicals that are vital for our body and also allow them to live and replicate. So that's the essence of what we've discovered in the last 20 years, really, since we knew about them, and we're still learning about them, but it's key that they are vitally important for many bits of our body, particularly our immune system, they're talking to the immune system all the time. So they're little chemicals they make after they've eaten your food. They are talking to the immune system and then calming it down generally if they've got good signals, and ramping it up, getting it excited if they're getting bad signals. And that's really important for all kinds of things in our body, such as food allergies, autoimmune disease, general inflammation. Also is important for our mental health and our risk of getting cancer and aging. All these things are related to this interaction. They also interact with our nervous system, so in sending another way they can send messages to the brain. And so the brain and the gut are really communicating because of these microbes. And
so even the way we feel,
correct,
it influences the way. Okay.
So they've done lots of interesting mouse studies where they can swap the gut microbes of mice with each other and make them more or less anxious or frightened, and change. They can cure depression by just moving around the microbes, because some of the chemicals the microbes produce we know are really important for the brain, such as serotonin, which is the basis of antidepressant medication, and they also produce something called GABA, which is the basis of benzodiazepine relaxing medication. These are all chemicals that can be produced by our gut microbes, and there's many more we still don't know about. So they also are important in how we not only digest food, control our appetite signals, but they also break down all our medicines differently in all of us, because the other thing about them is we all have very different individual unique microbiomes. So unlike anything else in our bodies, which are very similar, so our genes, for example, are 99.9% similar, you and I. We are, on average, would be fifth cousins. Our microbes are not related, so we would share probably less than 20% of our microbe species with each other.
Everybody in general?
Yes.
Oh, so wow.
Even identical twins hardly share anymore. So that was, to me, that was one of my revelation moments in my science career, which happened about the same time in 2011 when I had my medical accident. This discovery that identical twins had very different gut microbiomes, and that to me explained why we're more different than we should be, why we're not just genetically clones that all get the same diseases and have the same problems.
And why one thing is good for one person and the other, for the other person, it has a different effect.
Correct, exactly.
We'll talk a lot more about how we influence this microbiome, because I think our food is one of the most important things, how we influence this microbiome, right? Are there any other clear factors that influence this microbiome, or is food the most?
Well, food's the main one.
Okay.
But there are other ones. So antibiotics.
Okay.
And how many you've had as a child and as an adult can have very big effects on your microbiome. We know that diseases, chronic diseases, common diseases, particularly if they affect the immune system, can have a negative effect on your gut microbiome as well. So it's a two-way process. So the microbes can affect your body can also affect your microbes. So illness, antibiotic, food, then you've got things like your environment. So we know people brought up in the countryside have healthier guts than people brought up in cities. And we think that over-sterilization of childhood, spraying everything and having everything super clean, has a negative effect also on the gut microbiome. So there's that, and there's a number of medicines as well that have negative effects on the body.
It's a bit off topic, so you don't have to evaporate on it, but I can imagine also having a C-section or vaginal birth in the beginning also influences the microbiome.
It does, yes, but it probably only seems to have its major effect for the first 3 years.
Okay.
After that, we don't see big differences between people. But obviously, in that first 3 years, you're forming your immune system, and it could be crucial to your immunity, and that might explain why C-section babies tend to be more obese and have more allergies than natural delivery babies.
Okay, we're going to dive into the information about food and our microbiome. But before we do, I just wanted to say your Food for Life cookbook. I already have some favorite recipes like the beetroot brownies and the soda bread with seeds, and especially the creamy kale pasta. I was curious.
You picked the really rich, tasty ones that should be unhealthy, but yes. But they're not.
Really?
No, but,
well, that's perfect. That's perfect, right? That you have like this, craving, that you can support your craving in a healthy way. But I was curious, what is, according to you, like how does this cookbook differ from all the cookbooks out there?
Well, there are, I don't know how many 100,000 cookbooks that there are out there. I think this one is different because I'm a medical scientist who's put it together. We're trying to give people 100 practical examples of the scientific advice we give people on how to eat. So, and eating in this way is very different to everything that's been talked about before. So you'd in the past have low-fat cookbooks or keto cookbooks or just vegan cookbooks without any great principles of science behind it. So what we've tried to do is to give people 6 principles of eating and give then these examples that illustrate it. And this is really came from my previous book, Food for Life, which was quite a dense science book about the A to Z of food. And people said to me that, okay, I get the principles, but can you give me some examples of what sort of really good tasting meals should look like using those scientific principles? So that's why I think it's different. And the other thing is they're easy to cook. A lot of then it's not like a complicated gourmet cookbook. You can do a lot of them in 15, 20 minutes prep time. And I can cook them, so they can't be that tough. I'm not a professional chef or anything. And they also, you'll notice a lot of them have lots of fermented food in them as well, and that is pretty unusual. I've not seen any other cookbooks that do that. So I think there's lots of. Each recipe also has a score, which we give it a health score. This came out of the company Zoe that's worked out ways of making sure that it doesn't give you too much of a sugar spike. There's your fat score after eating isn't, you can get rid of the fat from it, and the gut healthy score as well. So, and you can keep track of the plants.
It's an alternative to the calories counting. This score, this health score. Yeah.
The other thing we do is we do not mention the C word once.
No. Okay.
No
You're trying to rewrite this.
If you're looking for calories, this is not the book for you. This is the anti-calorie book. This is how we've got it all wrong, and it's all about quality, not calories. So there's lots of. Now you mention it, there's lots of things that are different about this book compared to others, but it still lovely pictures. It still looks nice. So and they're tasty.
Maybe one thing about the C word, because I know that people are always like, longing to know how many calories are in it. So why should we stop longing for this, to know how many calories are in a dish?
Because for the last 30 years we've been brainwashed into thinking that calories are the best way to describe a plate or a food. And that has led us towards the path of obesity, mental illness, and diabetes, because people who follow calorie restricted diets, the vast majority of them fail, and they go in a cycle of ever increasing weight and hunger and depression and mental problems about food. And the food companies want us to talk about calories because they can sell you highly processed alternatives to those high calorie foods. They call it low calorie, they give it a false label, healthy label on it. And if you're obsessed with calories, you're not looking at the quality of the food.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about, does it have nutrients? Does it have fiber? Does it have protein in it? Is it going to fill me up? All of these things are really important. Is it good for my gut? So we've found that, and we've demonstrated, we have 250,000 customers of Zoe in the UK and the US now, and people who follow our recommendations, ignoring the calories, will lose weight long term and feel better. So that's why we think it's the easy way to sustainably change your diet, rather than going through a cycle of 6 weeks of weight loss and massive hunger.
Definitely.
And everything else. So it's just, calorie counting doesn't work. It's a failed experiment, and we should just completely ignore it.
In Holland, we have this saying that we compare apples to pears, and it's also with calories. Like, you're comparing a calorie of plants, or 100 calories of plants is totally something different than 100 calories of chips, for example.
Exactly,
So,
and the way they're calculated is also incredibly inaccurate.
Okay.
And they can be out by 20-30%, and so they don't take into account the structure of the food. They'll score, chickpeas in their full form, the same as hummus, or almond flour.
Not mentioning it. We're not mentioning it anymore.
Please don't.
Okay.
Please don't. Let's ban it. Let's ban the C word.
Yeah. So, can you take us through your 6 principles? The first one being this: eat 30 plants per week. I must say, since I read it, I'm totally inspired, and it really helps with my kids. I have 4 kids, 1 baby and 3 older ones. And since I've said, okay, we have to eat 30 plants per week, we are counting our plants on the plate, which is actually kind of a fun thing to do. So I was almost thinking about making a 30 plants calendar where my kids can just tick off when they've eaten a plant. So for me it works, but tell the listeners, what is it, the concept of 30 plants per week?
Well, the concept comes from the fact that your microbes like diversity of fiber. So we have thousands of species, each of them are very highly specialized. And they, so the more different types of fiber, the more you can sustain different gut microbes in your body. And we want to support as many good microbes, different ones as possible, because they're producing lots of different chemicals which give you, the most amazing pharmacy in case you need it.
Okay.
And if you narrow it down to just one type of fiber, then you will get a less healthy group of microbes. So that's the rationale, and we came up with this 30 figure because about 10 years ago we did an experiment with in UK and the US. We had a crowdfunding project called the American Gut Project, and it turned out that people had the healthiest looking gut microbiomes were eating around 30 plants, different plants a week, not the same plant, different ones.
Yeah.
And so, it may not be exactly 30, but it's stuck and it seems to work. And if you get your 30 plants, and that includes fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. They're all plants. Grains, yes.
Also? Okay.
Although we try not to include the staples, so we wouldn't say eating bread as a plant, or eating white rice as a plant, or pasta. But if it's something like quinoa or bulgur wheat, then probably yes, we would. Coffee is also a plant, as is
Good
chocolate.
to know.
It's
Wine,
dark chocolate.
red wine.
Red wine for me counts, although I'm not sure everyone agrees with me. So the idea is that to encourage diversity, try and have these, adding more herbs and spices to your meals. All of these improve your health of your gut microbes. And by doing that, you don't have to worry about fiber counts and everything else because it naturally takes care of it all. It's very hard to eat 30 plants in an unhealthy way. It's like And what we also showed, it doesn't matter if you still eat meat or fish, as long as you're getting that on your plate, you're doing pretty well. You don't have to be vegetarian or vegan.
This was my next question, because I read also in your book that you are not you've been a vegan, but you are not now. You call yourself a flexitarian. I had the same experience. I was a vegan for years, and now I'm a flexitarian. And I was still not 100% sure, like, is this the way to go? Should I go back to being a vegan? What is your opinion about that?
Well, we've done a big study of 30,000 people with Zoe, and we compared vegans, vegetarians, and omnivores.
Yeah.
And on average, vegans are the healthiest group.
Yeah.
But within each of the three groups, the ones that come up top are actually the omnivores who have lots of plants.
Okay.
So it depends whether, so what it's telling you is that it's the plants that are the key to this, and that if
As
on
a
top
base,
of your,
like,
if your base is plant-based, having the occasional bit of meat or fish or dairy on top of that will probably give you what looks like a healthier looking gut microbiome.
Okay.
But if you overdo the plants and the meat and the fish, then you won't be getting the plants. You'll drop down your health scale. So it's like everything, small amounts of meat and fish and dairy are probably good for you. Overdoing it means you're not getting all the healthy stuff.
And in terms of percentages, what can I think about when it comes to fish, meat, dairy, compared to plants?
We don't know precisely, but I mean, you can't have a healthy diet if you're having meat and fish every day as your main meal.
Yeah.
Unless it's a tiny side plate, So, I have meat once or twice a month.
Okay.
I have fish maybe once a week.
Yeah. And dairy?
I have dairy most days.
Okay.
But it's always fermented dairy.
Yeah, like kefir. Then we're talking about kefir, yogurt.
I don't drink milk, and I don't believe there's any health benefit of milk, which will upset many of your listeners.
Yes.
So the latest science is that it's
Tell
not
me
helpful.
more. Tell me more. Okay.
The latest science is not really helpful, other than for growth. So the reason the Dutch is probably so tall is they get
because of the milk.
Overfed cow's milk, and they grow more, but it makes the bones weaker, and so Netherlands has one of the highest rates of bone fractures in Europe.
Wow.
So
interesting.
And there's no evidence that it protects you later in life against fractures.
And maybe also because we eat a lot of cheese, or is cheese fermented?
Cheese is fermented.
Okay, so that would include. Okay, but that's good. That's a good thing for the Dutch people, that we can still eat our cheese.
You can still have your Gouda, yes.
Yeah. And I think also that's one of the things that I read in your book, that it's not about, like, you can still have your guilty pleasures.
Yes.
So I would say, if you would really enjoy your coffee with milk, don't beat yourself up about it.
No, correct, exactly. That's it's realizing that you just keep adding more interesting stuff to your food.
Yeah.
And that's what's going to give you the benefits and the pleasure, and it will be sustainable. So there's no point coming up with a really strict diet and rule that only lasts 6 weeks, because you'll be worse off after that, when you're feeling hungry or depressed. This has to be sustainable for years and decades. Just a new way of thinking about food. So, even I will go off, when I'm traveling, I'm off to Belgium this weekend. I'm sure I'm going to have lots of unhealthy food, but as long as that just a small percentage of the time, it doesn't matter, as long as you get back on track and you realize, okay, I'm going to make up for that. So generally an 80-20 rule is fine. If you can try and do the right thing 80% of the time, 20% of the time, have fun, relax. Life is too short.
Enjoy.
Yeah, exactly. If you go to a friend's house, they're serving an unhealthy meal, it's more important to sit down with them and socialize and bond and make up for it later, not be a religious fanatic.
Yeah. I also included some readers' questions, which we got. So with every principle, I will ask 1 or 2 readers' questions. This one is from Eva, and she asks, "What are your top 3 easy ways to integrate more plants into my diet?"
Well, the first is to think about it. So bear that first principle in mind. Have I had many plants today? And realize what a plant is. As we discussed, it's broader than just thinking about spinach or kale. The other is what I do is, for my breakfast, I would have a jar of nuts and seeds in it.
Oh yeah.
Which
with
usually
mixed, right? You mix it up.
Mixed up. So that has 10 plants in it.
Perfect.
And I will put that on my morning kefir and yogurt, but I will also put it on salads. And I'm always looking to add spices to my food because that
counts as well.
That counts as plants. And when I go shopping, I'm always looking for something unusual. Maybe I haven't had this for a while. I'll get different coloured carrots, for example. Not just Dutch carrots. I might go for some Iranian, Persian carrots that are purple. So just trying to mix things up a bit, and in a restaurant try and get some foods I'm not normally eating. So I'm trying to just increase my diversity, my thoughts. So that once you do that, it's actually easy. And as well as dried herbs, putting fresh parsley and other things on coriander on your food as well. Also, they all count.
What is your take on a smoothie? Because I notice it's one of the easiest ways for my kids to get in different veggies. I make them with beetroot or kale and seeds. Is that okay? A smoothie?
I'm not a big fan because most smoothies are too sweet, and they I put 3 bananas in there and
dates.
And so you're getting a huge sugar rush, and you don't always get all the fiber. So I think it depends on the smoothie. But if you're able to put nuts and seeds in there, and you can keep the sugar content down, then I agree. For many people, it's an easy way to get those plants in. But I think most people abuse it, and they eventually keep putting more bananas and dates and cherry and grapes,
sweet
and things like this. Sweet things, in it, strawberries and things like this, which and you can eat many more of them in a smoothie than you can in real life. So that's the other danger, that we didn't evolve.
We overdo it. Okay. Because you're not chewing also, right? So
it's a bit like orange. It's a bit like orange juice. Having an orange is fine. It takes you a while to peel it. You're having the fiber with it, all the white stuff. You end up in your mouth. That's contributing. Whereas when you squeeze it, you're leaving most of the fiber behind. You're just getting a lot of the juice. And in a glass of orange juice, you're having the equivalent of 8 oranges. So, which is far too much.
Without the fiber, usually.
Without the fiber, exactly. So they're the things you have to balance up.
You touched upon it a bit about the purple carrot. Your second principle, eat the rainbow. What is that about?
That people have probably heard the phrase before.
Yes.
But they didn't really know why. And I think the latest science is showing us that the colours of fruits and vegetables and berries and nuts are telling you that they have chemicals in them that are plant defense chemicals. So, and they used to be called antioxidants.
Yeah.
And I think the new name for them is polyphenols. So this
It's
is
the
a word
same.
that essentially they're the same.
Okay.
I mean, the word antioxidant was used in a very general term because scientists didn't actually know what else to call them.
Okay.
And now we know that most of the point of them is in the plant is to keep them healthy. Their defense against the wind and the sun and the cold. They might also protect them against insects. But when we eat them, our gut microbes use them as energy. So most of the polyphenols get used by our gut microbes rather than us humans directly.
Oh, interesting.
And
okay.
this is why the more polyphenols you have in a food, that's in a way the second important thing for your gut microbes. So yes, the fiber, but also these polyphenols. So that's why you need to be, when you can, selecting ones that are high in polyphenols, and the trick is to look for bright colors or bitter flavors and tastes.
Okay. So the bright colors have more or higher levels or more different. But it's one, and then is it one type of polyphenol per color?
No,
or?
I mean there are thousands of types of polyphenol.
Okay.
I mean there are, like the purple ones have some, the blue purple type of plants have something called anthocyanins, but in a way they're all mixtures of these polyphenols. So it doesn't matter what the precise ones are. You want to get a diversity of them because again you want a diversity of fuel for your microbes because there'll always be one species in there that is going to be eating them. So eat the rainbow, go for the, if you have two choices, a lettuce that is just green
kind
and
of white,
green and boring like an iceberg lettuce, which I think is the #1 lettuce sold in Netherlands, or you have a Rosso Lolo Italian lettuce with purple, red purple tips to the leaves, and it's loose. There's 1,000 times more polyphenols in the Italian lettuce than in the American iceberg lettuce. Yeah.
So go for color.
Go for color, but also go for bitterness. So that's when you have good quality olive oil, you get a bitter flavor at the back of the mouth. You might cough, peppery. That's also a sign that that's the polyphenols hitting you. So you know that's good quality.
I think it's one of the things that we are excluding more and more from our diet, right? The bitter taste.
Yeah, we're not training our children to have them. They're so full of artificial sweeteners, and we're not giving them sour tastes, we're not giving them bitter tastes. But really important because that's how we used to know these things were good for us in the past. So not so bitter you couldn't eat it, but just slightly bitter that was telling you there were good chemicals in there. And
what are your favorites when it comes to bitter food?
Well, so olive oil, coffee is high in polyphenols and also has considerable fiber, so is a health food. Then you've got some nuts like walnuts, Brazil nut have a sort of certain bitterness to them. Dark chocolate above 80%. When you get that high concentrated cacao, that's a bean that's been fermented, so it's a fermented food, but it has high polyphenols. And sometimes the fermentation produces that, and then you've got red wine would be another one, and
grapefruit.
Grapefruit does as well, yes, but some of that is some of that's the sourness as well, and that can indicate, but that often indicates vitamin C, so it's generally a good sign. But all of these strong tasting foods tend to be good for us, and as you said, the last 50 years we've been phasing them out and just going for sweetness.
Yeah.
But,
so it's also about training ourselves, maybe a bit, retraining to enjoy
yes, and
these kind of foods.
starting to, but it's a bit like chocolate. If you have a country like the UK where we like milk chocolate, you have to train people to slowly increase the percentage of cacao until it gets to the healthy levels. And it's the same. We all did that, reducing the sweetness in our tea. When we were kids, you usually add sugar, and then as you get an adult, you slowly reduce it. So these are all things. You get used to it. You get used to it, exactly.
Yeah.
But and there are many of these lettuces, like I was talking about, radicchio lettuce. It's like a chicory, the purple chicory one from Italy, really bitter, but you can really start to enjoy it as you get used to it in your salads. Yeah, I must say, in my experience, in terms of the chocolate, I loved white chocolate, and now my favorite thing is dark chocolate, and with a high percentage. So you think maybe at first, I don't like it, but it's also about training and getting used to the taste, and then exactly. We can all adapt our. The idea that we're fixed is nonsense. We just have to, slowly do it, not try and change overnight. And chocolate's a fantastic example of how, the stronger the chocolate, the healthier it is for you. And we should all be moving up a few percent every month. Yeah. So let's talk about the third principle: rethink protein sources. One of my favorites, also because this protein craze in society. I think that we're especially when it comes to a plant-based diet, people are afraid they don't get enough proteins. So tell me a bit more about this principle. So we're in a marketing phase. All the big companies are marketing protein. Yeah. But 90% of us are getting more than enough protein, probably double the amount of protein we need. And whereas 95% of us are not getting enough fiber. So, we need to be... Big misconception. Exactly. So people are worried about reducing their meat intake, which would be, the best thing they can do for the planet, because they're worried about their protein. And it's really just to tell people, don't be worried. Fiber is your problem, not protein. And there are ways of switching. If you're switching out meat, particularly red meat, legumes, and that whole family of lentils and beans are ideal swaps, because not only are they high in protein, plant protein, but also they are really high in fiber, which meat lacks. So you get a double benefit when you switch, or you're trying to reduce your meat intake, and you're swapping it for the bean and legume family. And I think this is something we all need to be much more of, and realize how many different types of beans and lentils there are out there, and they're incredibly cheap. They're accessible. Yeah. You can get them in cans. You can get them frozen. You don't have to spend time or money doing that, and it's so much better for you. And actually, as in this book, there's so many lovely recipes with beans that I think it should be, at the center of most people's kitchen. But are there benefits to animal proteins, or things that are better in animal proteins than in vegetable proteins or plant protein? So what most people hear from the social media and American carnivore influencers who are bodybuilding and showing off their muscles all the time, is that you can't replace animal protein because it's unique. That's not true. The only difference is that if you have animal protein, it has the perfect ratios of the amino acid building blocks of protein. So you don't have to worry about getting the balance right. If you have plants, if you only ate one type of plant, you would not get the right balance of amino acids. But if you eat a range of them, you will naturally get all the amino acids you need. So there's no danger of vegetarians not getting enough protein if they have a diversity of plants. I think that's the key message.
Yeah.
But if you are vegan, you do need to pay more attention to your protein intake, and that's why you should really be focusing on the high protein plants, such as the legumes, for example. But there's many grains as well that are high in protein. Pasta has a reasonable amount of protein, but then you've got quinoas and bulgur wheats, barley, pearl barley, really high levels, up to 10% protein in those that people don't realize.
No, not at all, no. And, this is a personal question. I'm reaching my 40s this year, and I'm doing strength training twice a week. What can I do to support my muscles and the combination of getting older? What choices can I make best in terms of protein intake?
Right, well, the recommendations are generally about having 0.85 grams of protein per kilogram of your weight. They were based on people who probably didn't do much exercise. So my advice is to increase that by about 15% to saying you're having a gram of protein if you're doing moderate bit of exercise training. We do know you do lose lean mass as you get older, and so it is important, as well as doing cardiovascular training, to do some weight training. So, but generally 1 gram per kilogram is generally enough. If you're doing it very intensively, several hours a day, you probably should go to 1.2 grams. But there's no
time
need
for that.
There's no need to have things like whey protein or these protein supplements unless you're a professional athlete or you're sick or unwell and you can't eat properly. I think that's the key.
Do you have maybe 1 or 2 favorites in proteins or the combinations which I should put on my plate in terms of ingredients?
I don't really. I mean, I'm a big fan of, I love my, cheese and yogurts and kefir, because they're also good for you in other ways.
Yeah, okay.
So we know that fermented foods are good for you. They're a really good source, and I think that the legumes are really fantastic for that. But it's the diversity. I don't want to focus on one thing, because I think the key here is to be mixing it up and just making sure that you've got those. And of course, tofu is you can throw tofu in any meal if you want to supplement, just as well you can throw in eggs as well. So there's lots of ways to do it, but I think don't believe the publicity, the marketing from the big food companies. They're just trying to sell you supplements and snacks. They're not interested in your health.
Okay, no. One question before we go to the next principle. In terms of eggs, I've heard a lot of different advices. One camp is saying it's bad for you, high cholesterol, and the other one, as you said, I assume that you say they're good for you. What do we know about it? Like, what should I...
The latest science, and there's been a lot of epidemiology work on this, is that eggs in moderation are probably good for you. In excess, they may not be. So most people are saying, maybe up to about 10 eggs a week is probably fine for you.
Okay.
But if you're having 2 or 3 eggs a day, it may not be.
Yeah.
So have them, but don't go crazy on them.
Exactly, as goes for a lot of things. So the fourth principle is about prioritizing quality over ultra-processed foods. Maybe first, what are ultra-processed foods?
So this is a slightly out-of-date term that was coined in 2009 by a population scientist in Brazil, and they worked out that anything that had an additive that you wouldn't find in your normal kitchen, a chemical additive that was a food that was made in a factory, classed as ultra processed.
Okay.
And this includes 57% of the foods in the UK and about 45% in the Netherlands. And
so much.
And increasing amounts every year. It's going up, and it's probably higher in children as well. So most children's foods are ultra processed, and the epidemiology study shows that eating these regularly is associated with about a 30% increase in nearly all diseases, cancer, heart disease, mental illness, obesity, diabetes, Alzheimer's, etc. So, and that's a very broad category. So,
crazy.
Within that, there are many foods that are probably fine, and many foods that are really bad, and so it's diluting the real bad effects of them. So,
but how do you know? Like how do you know? How do I know when I'm in a supermarket that is something I should avoid, that particular product?
You have to read the back of the pack. You have to ignore. It'll tell you on the front it's healthy. Because European rules are pathetic, and they allow big food companies to say things like, a breakfast cereal that has 35% sugar on it is healthy for the family, and a big healthy sticker, because the food companies are lobbying in Brussels to make sure nothing changes, and they're healthy only because they include some cheap vitamins from China that you don't need, and that accounts for being healthy. So don't believe any of that stuff. Go to the back of the packet, look at the list of ingredients, and if you don't recognize 2 or more, then it's definitely ultra processed.
Put it back. Okay.
And it will have been designed not only to have additives to change your taste buds, artificial sweeteners, emulsifiers, glues to stick it together, preservatives, but it also designed to make you overeat it. So it'll have things like salt and fat and sugar in the right combination to change your brain to make you never feel hungry. So you just keep eating them. So people who eat ultra-processed foods
tend to eat much more.
They overeat by about 25%. So about 500 calories a day more than people who don't. They just don't feel full. That's why they're an evil food, because people don't realize what it's doing to them.
It's crazy to think that this is the case in the world, I think, because you said in Europe these rules are pathetic, but isn't it also in the US that these
Yes,
it's everywhere, or?
Yes, but the US, they have the new government, although they have their own problems. The one thing that they are doing right is focusing on ultra-processed food and trying to at least get their regulations to the same as Europe in terms of dangerous additives that cause cancer, etc. And I'm feeling it is tipping, and so people are talking about, we're talking with the school board in California to ban the worst ultra-processed foods, and we've got a new risk scale we've just developed at Zoe to classify all processed foods in terms of how risky they are for your health. So I think it's moving in the right direction, but people need to realize that it's not just the additives that might give you cancer or upset your gut microbes, but make you overeat. And I think people, so you can have a low-calorie product that looks attractive but makes you overeat, and that's the essence of this principle: is forget whatever it says about calories on the pack. That's a disguise. It's basically a warning telling you they're trying to trick you into eating real crap, low quality food made super cheap in a factory, and they're giving you the calorie count, but they're not telling you what's in it, because it has nothing real. There's nothing real in there. It won't fill you up, it won't make you hungry, it won't give you any nutrients, it won't provide any fiber, it's going to make you sick.
Yeah. And when we talk about quality food, is it whole foods? Is that what is?
Essentially, that's it.
Okay. Simple. Whole foods for people who don't know, I can imagine, but it's like broccoli. What you see is what you get.
Yeah, it's not made in a factory, it's not in a package. It is in its raw form. And, it can be lightly processed. I mean, so if you put some chickpeas in a can, that's lightly processed, but it's still a whole food. Yeah. And so I think that's the key, that you can still see it's the whole food. It hasn't been recreated in some monster laboratory in the Netherlands, which is a big centre for European ultra-processed foods. So they're one of, and they have the best food scientists in the world trying to trick us into eating these foods and adding things to make it look real or give it the colour and texture of real food.
Yeah, so it's really important on this aspect for us to become aware that this is a thing. You won't be able to cut it out completely, but at least get it down from 50% of the diet to maybe 10%. And the further south you go in Europe, the lower the rates of ultra-processed food eating are. So there's definitely a north-south divide. Difference.
And if you go to Spain, Portugal, Greece, Italy, they're around 10% of their diet is ultra-processed, whereas Netherlands 40%, Germany 50%, UK 57%. It's
wow.
That's the real big difference.
Let's talk about the fifth principle, because we are we're not rushing, but we're running out of time. Time flies, but we've touched upon it a couple of times already. Fermented foods. Tell me a bit about why fermented foods are good for the microbiome. I'm going to share a little bit about my own fermenting experience after that.
So what I mean by fermented foods are foods that have been transformed by microbes into something that tastes better or is healthier for you. And you could also call them probiotic foods, because we believe that transformation is a healthy transformation. And when you're eating them, you're generally eating live microbes, and they go into your gut and they have a beneficial stimulating effect on the rest of your body. And there's now hundreds of studies showing that eating these foods is healthy, reduces inflammation, improves gut symptoms, and improves a number of diseases. And we did a study with Zoe on 10,000 people. We asked them who never ate fermented foods before. We said, try eating 3 portions a day of different ones, and over 50% of people who completed the 2-week trial noticed improvements in their mental state, their energy levels, their reduced appetite, less bloating, better bowel movement, etc. So we don't know all the mechanisms, but we do know they work, and it's super important to reintroduce these. We used to have these 50 years ago. Yeah,
because it's a good way to store. Yeah. It's a good way to store food, right? That's
exactly.
You can keep food much longer.
Way, because the microbes protect the food. So you should never worry about. You should never worry about eating a yogurt. It may be a bit old and go slightly towards a cheesy flavour, but it's never going to be harmful for you.
Ah, interesting. And when you talk about you said 3 portions a day. What kind of foods do I have to think about then? What kind of portions?
Okay, so you've got your typical ones, your yogurts, your cheeses, and always go for ones that are, no flavourings or additives. They're full fat. Yeah. Okay. Never have the low fat ones. There's less nutrition in those. There's less nutrition, and often they've added starches into it to compensate for the lack of mouthfeel of the fat. And there's no evidence that the evidence is that full fat produce is slightly better than low fat for you.
Okay.
And again, go for whichever cheese you like eating, but avoid the highly processed ones.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the 4Ks. So kefir, which is fermented milk, which has 5 times more microbes than yogurt, and you may want to mix them together because it's more sour.
Yeah, we eat it as a yogurt at home. My kids eat it as a yogurt instead of yogurt. Yeah.
Yes, well that's the best way to have it. It's, but it can be a drink and can be a bit too liquid. So I mix mine because I like the texture of Greek yogurt more. But so milk, that's really good for you.
Yeah.
Then you've got kimchi, which is like a Korean sauerkraut, which is probably really has about 30 microbes in it. It's really varied. Then you've got krauts and all the. You just beware that you buy ones that are in brine or make yourself, rather than ones in vinegar. Ones in vinegar are dead.
Yeah, because that was what I wanted to ask. Is there a difference between pasteurized krauts and none? And because I think pasteurized krauts are not in the cooling section.
Yeah.
And
so all of these produce are, whatever you buy, it's always best to buy it from the cooling section because that shows it's alive.
Okay.
If it's in the unrefrigerated section, it's dead.
Good advice.
Then you've got kombucha. It's the final K.
Yeah.
Which is fermented tea, which is increasingly popular. You've got something called water kefir, or tibikos, which is like a milk kefir but made with just water and sugar, and there are lots of fruit versions of that. Then you've got all the Japanese style ferments made with soy paste that's fermented. So this is anything that's miso based.
Yeah, good one.
So even soy sauce, the good ones are live microbes in there. Best miso paste is live as well. So that's.
Is it true that you shouldn't boil that, or you shouldn't heat it too much?
Yes, if you want to keep it live, add it at the end. It's not always possible to do that with miso paste, so don't worry about it too much. But and there's some evidence that dead microbes might be of some use anyway, even if they're not alive. So the science is still ongoing on that. So there's lots of ways to have fermented foods that you can add to your diet, and the cookbook is full of little ways of doing that.
So I think I know the answer already, but this is one of the readers' questions from Joska, and she said, if you could do one thing for better gut health, what would it be? I would say incorporate fermented foods, but maybe you have another answer to that.
It's actually a tough one because I don't know whether 30 plants or fermented food, because I would say if you had 30 plants, your microbes would be pretty happy. If you only had fermented foods and no plants, they wouldn't be quite so happy.
So that's the answer to the question.
Do both. Tell us to do both.
Okay. Last but not least, practice the last principle, practice time-restricted eating.
Yes.
Especially for kids, I think important, because my kids are asking to eat all day.
Yeah.
What am I doing wrong then?
So it's partly a training thing. I think our ancestors didn't eat 6 meals a day. They probably just had 2 meals a day. They didn't eat breakfast.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I think the key here is to give your gut a good rest overnight. So just like you need to sleep, so your microbes need to sleep, the microbes repair the lining of your gut, and that improves your immune system, and your general efficiency is linked to that. So a really important feature. But we also know that avoiding late night snacking is really good for your metabolism as well. And late night snackers tend to put on more weight, and the body doesn't deal with it. But it's we did a study of this again, in a population study of 100,000 people, a third of people loved it, and they found it really easy to fast for 14 hours overnight.
Yeah. So what would that be? Don't eat after
9, for example, until 11 next morning. Or for some people, it's slightly more efficient to stop eating at 6 and then have your breakfast at 8 o'clock the next morning.
Yeah. Okay.
Most people prefer the late one to the early one, but it's whatever fits in with your life, because this is, again, not for 6 weeks. This is a lifetime experiment, and even if you can only do 12 hours, that's probably still beneficial. Most people currently are averaging about 10 hours from our estimations. So,
and there is a big difference between 10 hours and 12 or 4. Yeah, yes. A big difference in health benefits.
Yes. And what we found is we did this massive population study, so 30,000 people followed it for 2 weeks and reported much better health, interesting, less hunger, and mood improvements. So I think a lot of people have breakfast too early. They have a sugar spike and then a dip, and then at 10 or 11 in the morning, their energy levels are really low. If you delay your breakfast in the morning, you don't get that dip. So I think that's why the book has a section on brunches, and I'm very much into moving breakfast later in the day. I still love breakfast, but don't have it too early, if you can. The caveat here is not everyone likes doing this, so there will be some people that are constant snackers, and you have to work out if you're that person or not. So it's more of an experiment. Do it if you can.
And for example, I noticed with my daughter, who's 9, and she doesn't like breakfast. She eats a lot in the evening, but then of course she goes to school, so she has to have something. Her first snack is at 11. Should I stimulate her more to eat more of her breakfast, or just
I would let
leave it?
Her decide what she feels like eating, because kids know pretty well what they need to eat.
Usually better than grown-ups.
They do, and I think this is a new way of thinking, that we need to be more relaxed about our children's habits, get them, but I think it is good training to let children go a long time without snacks. The snack thing is a new concept. When I went to school, nobody had snacks. You didn't take anything to school. Now in the UK, everyone takes snacks to school, and they're terrible, ultra-processed rubbish. And all the children swap them, and they're always eating. So they get used to this habit of always, every time you feel slightly hungry, you've got to eat something. And I think we need to change that mentality so that people can actually enjoy real good meals, sit down properly, and enjoy them.
Yeah, well, we can do a whole separate interview, I think, about kids and food. Maybe we will keep that for the next time. As a final question that I have, nutritional science is constantly evolving. Can you share your perspective on navigating this complexity in food science and how we should approach nutritional information? How do you do that, for example?
Well, it's easier for me because I'm a scientist. I can go to the scientific papers and see if they're real or not. For the public, it is really difficult because a lot of people claim there's science backing it, but the people telling you this are often not scientists. They're not medical. They're not in the health professionals. They're just influencers, and they can be paid by companies or big food to say whatever those companies want them to say. So be suspicious of anything new. Be suspicious of anything that sounds like a simple solution to everything. Beware of the magic bullet. Beware of the supplement tablet. Beware that somebody from the middle of nowhere has discovered the answer to one of the most complex sciences, which is nutrition and our bodies. And don't just do things for a few weeks. It's got to be years of your life. and
Okay.
don't be fooled by all these people. And and go to proper scientific sources. The company Zoe has the #1 nutrition podcast in the world at the moment in the English language, called Zoe Science and Nutrition. We only interview scientists and get those points of views. That's what you want. You want to be talking to real scientists doing peer-reviewed research, not just TikTok influencers.
Yeah. And I think even though the science is constantly evolving, there are some, well, maybe 6 principles that we can say this is really backed up. This is not going to change.
You've got to realise that it takes a while for all science to change and everyone's opinion to change. So there will be a time when you get different opinions. The medical community is very slow to change. It takes about 20 years. So you've got to realise, is someone on the cutting edge? Are they old-fashioned? What's going on here? It is tough, but find someone you trust and follow them.
Yeah. Thank you so much for this conversation. It's been really inspirational, insightful as well. The good thing is the Food for Life cookbook has come out in Dutch. So our listeners and viewers can go out if they're inspired and want to start cooking in a better, healthier way today. I would say run off to the store or buy it online. Thank you, Tim, and we'll be following you with your work, definitely.
Great. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.